Alright, let's look at number 1. It says, given the graph shown on the right, which scenario best matches this graph? So first thing I want to do is I want to look at the graph and look at my axes. I see that the x-axis is time and the y-axis is speed. We want to remember that y always depends on x, so y depends on x. Just one thing that we want to know there. So the speed's going to depend on the time. Now I'm going to look at the graph itself, and I see that the speed is on the y-axis. So if I look at this line here, it shows that the speed is not going up and it's not going down. It's staying at a constant rate, and then the speed is going to increase after staying at a constant rate for a little while. So now I'm going to go over and look at my answer choices, A, B, C, and D, and decide which one best represents that graph. So for A, it says, Sarah runs steadily down the street for a few minutes and then climbs steadily up the hill. Okay, so Sarah runs down the street for a few minutes. And I guess if she's running at a constant speed down the street, that's fine. And then it says she climbs steadily up the hill. Well, if she's climbing steadily, that means she's going the same speed. But right here we see that the speed is increasing. So I would say that this first choice, A, is false. So I'm going to put an F next to it. I'm going to look at B. An airliner flies at his cruising altitude and rises to a higher altitude. Okay, keywords in this problem are cruising altitude and a higher altitude. But we know that we're talking about time and speed. So B has nothing to do with this problem. So I'm going to put an F next to this one as well. Alright, answer choice C. A snow skier is steadily skiing along a ridge. So steadily meaning they're having the same speed. And then it picks up speed as he races down the slope. We're not really worried about down a slope. That might be confusing or that might have tricked you, but what we're looking at is we're picking up speed, so we're getting faster. So we see that the speed is increasing here. So letter choice C looks good, so I'm going to put a T for true. And for D, let's read that one. It says, a bulldozer is gathering dirt in its bucket, then lifts the bucket to deposit this dirt in a deep hole. I guess if it's talking about a bulldozer is gathering dirt here, then it raises the bucket, but that has nothing to do with the time and the speed. So we're going to go ahead and say that that one is false as well. So the only good answer was answer choice C. Alright, number 2 says state the domain and range of the graph below. We know that domain are x values and range are our y values. And what I want to do is I want to look at x values first. So over here on this first point, the furthest to the left, I want to see where does that trace back to my x-axis. Okay, so I'm going to take my pen and draw from this point down to the x-axis, and it touches at -4. So for my domain, I'm going to open my bracket, and I'm going to write -4. And I have more points, so I'm going to put a comma. I then see that my next point will trace back to the -2 on the x-axis. So write that down, comma. Then I have it's over at 1, comma. This one traces back to 2, comma. And this one traces back to 4. That's my last point. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points on the graph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points for the domain. Now we're going to look at the range. So we're going to look at the y values. So I'm going to trace each of the points back to the y-axis. So this one goes back to the -3. So for my range, I'm going to put -3. The next one traces back to +1. This one's at +2. And both of these are at +4. Okay. I have 5 points again. I only listed 4 because 2 of them traced back to 4. Okay. Is it a function? So will it pass the vertical line test? I will draw vertical lines through each of the points and see if see if the line goes through more than one point. So it passes the vertical line test there, passes there, 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 and there. So is it a function? Yes. Alright, for number 3 it says state the domain and range of the graph below. So we are going to first look at the graph, and we see that it's continuous. So we have a line segment here. It goes from this point down to this point. I do notice that there's a closed circle here and an open circle on this end. When I'm looking at the domain, I'm going to be looking at the x value. So how far does this picture stretch from here to here? So how wide is it on the x-axis? So I will draw a line from that point down, because that's as far left as it goes. And then over here, this is as far right as it goes. So what are the two x values for this line? For the minimum, we have -5, and for the maximum, we have 4. Let's see, erase that, write it again. So we have 4 over here. So when I write my domain, I have two numbers. So -5 is my minimum, 4 is my maximum, and we're talking about x. The values of x are between those two numbers. So anywhere I am on this line, I'm between the -5 and the +4. So if I pick this point, I can trace it back up, and my x value is 2. That is between here and here. So now I have to put in my inequality symbols. So we always use less than here, and then we have to decide, does it equal this value or does it not equal the value? With a closed circle, it will be equal to. So I put the little line under it. On this side, it is a single point all by itself, and it's an open circle, so it does not include the value 4. So the value of x has to be less than 4. It cannot be equal to 4. So now we figured out the domain. It was the values of x, how far it stretches from the minimum to the maximum value. So next we're going to look at the range. So we have to see how low and how high is my picture. So I will look for a minimum value, and I'll look for a maximum value. So what's the lowest point? What's the highest point? I will trace this point back to the y-axis, and I see that it crosses at -5. And I'm going to trace this highest point back to the y-axis, and we see that it crosses at +4. So for my range, I have two values. I have a minimum and a maximum value. So I'm going to write -5, and I'm going to write +4, and y in the middle. So y is any value between -5 and 4. Then we're going to use our inequality symbol. So we start with the -5, and I look down here, and I see that there's a single point right here that comes down to -5. And since it's an open circle, we don't use equal with it, so we're just going to use the less than symbol. At the top, we see that the highest point is 4. It's a closed circle, so that means it does include the value. So we will say that y is less than or equal to 4. Last part, it says, is it a function? Well, to find out if something's a function, we just do a vertical line test. So I can run vertical lines, just means the ones that go up and down, through my graph in multiple places. As I draw my line through here, I'm never going to hit this line more than one time. Right? It goes through one time there, one time there, one time there, one time there. If it only goes through one time, it is a function, so the answer is yes. And if we were to give a reason, because it passes the vertical line test.